It's May the 15th, 2013.
And this is 508, the show about Worcester.
I'm Michael Benedetti. Today on the show, we have Maureen St. Cyr, we have Emily Jones, both from Legal Assistance, and Tracy Novick of the school committee. How are you doing, Tracy?
I'm doing all right, Mike. How are you?
Good. We're here at the Lodge at Cascading Waters. I am Michael Benedetti. So happy to have these people on the show today. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about positive things. It's such a good week.
Much better than last week.
There's nothing about death. There's nothing about being horrible this week. We're going to talk about slot machines. We're going to talk about panhandling. We're going to talk about rooming houses. We're going to talk about dressing well, presenting yourself well. We're going to talk about fair lending. Oh, I forgot one thing.
We're going to talk about schools.
We're going to talk about schools. I hate so much. Okay, so first, though, I'm really excited to have you guys. You guys are from Legal Assistance. Is that right?
Community Legal Aid.
Community Legal Aid.
Yeah, we changed our name. We used to be Legal Assistance of Central Massachusetts.
That's right.
And now we are Community Legal Aid.
I love this. I want to talk to you guys about. We're going to talk about fair lending on the show today. Mm-hmm. Also, we have so many special treats on the show. We're going to talk about fair lending, then we're going to have a special treat. Let's talk about fair lending first. Are you guys both lawyers, or what do you guys do down there at Legal Aid?
We're both staff attorneys. Right?
Okay.
I work partially for the city of Worcester on a community development block grant to help people post and pre-foreclosure with like evictions and those kinds of things. And then we are both on a grant from HUD. Did you want to explain?
Sure. We have a fair lending grant from HUD. So we're supposed to help people who have been discriminated against in the lending process and or are having difficulty with mortgage rescue scams, facing foreclosure, that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay. What do you mean discriminated against in the lending process?
Oh my gosh. So specifically this grant we have because of the foreclosure crisis, and because the foreclosure crisis is really, in a way, a crisis that has its roots in discrimination, and because
okay.
Because, oh God, I don't even know how to explain. I'm
Okay,
really mad.
So, what Maureen is talking about, the foreclosure crisis having roots in discrimination. For many years, there was a systematic, how would you say it? A systematic formula that was put out actually by the government at first.
Right. So, back in the 1930s, 1940s, the federal government started making these maps about, how to do. When they got into the lending business, one of the things that they did was they helped assess risk. Okay. And so they made these maps, and they were color-coded, neighborhood by neighborhood, looking at, what level risk is this neighborhood, and should we make loans to people who live in this neighborhood? And they were really very much overtly about the race of the neighborhood. So, yes, let's make loans to people who live in white neighborhoods because those are a good risk, but no, let's not make loans to people who live in African American or immigrant neighborhoods because those are a bad risk. Mm-hmm. And they're color coded, and so it's green for good risk and red for a bad risk. And so
is this thing of redlining?
Yes, that's what I was about to say. Redlining. This is redlining. So this is the systemic denial of access to credit to communities of color for decades, really until it was outlawed in 1968 with the passage of the Federal Fair Housing Act. But that wasn't really enforced for another couple decades. So they start to see sort of the DOJ getting involved in cracking down on redlining in the 1990s.
Okay.
But in the 1990s, that's when we started seeing subprime lending become a big thing, which was actually then targeting those same communities that had been historically denied access to credit for these really bad subprime loans, which were very dangerous and tend to lead to foreclosure much more quickly and with a much higher incidence because they're just much more risky loans. So you see a lot of foreclosures in communities of color because people in those neighborhoods were actually targeted by lenders for these loans, regardless of whether they, it was a good loan product for them, because they hadn't had access to credit for decades because of discrimination.
And so you guys are working on this from both a discrimination angle and a foreclosure prevention angle?
Yeah. Right. So the grant actually allows us to do foreclosure work as well as discrimination work.
Okay.
We, in Worcester, have been doing a lot more of the foreclosure side than the discrimination side. Mm-hmm. We're actually looking for cases right now. Some things that we've heard about around the country that we are looking for and have seen a little bit of. In one case recently, a bank was requesting additional documentation from a man who suffered from a disability. If you suffer from a disability, you do not need to prove certain information. So this
this is something that's happened in a lot of different areas, mostly on the origination side. And so like what would happen is someone will be trying to get a loan, and they receive disability income that continues. It's based on their disability, but it's it's ongoing because you have like a long-term disability. But what banks did was when we started tightening up the underwriting standards, they said, well, maybe this income isn't really going to be ongoing for 3 years, and so we want you to provide us with a letter from a doctor saying that your disability is permanent, and so your income from like Social Security or some other form of disability income is going to continue for 3 years.
Right.
But the government has released new underwriting guidelines that says no, if your income does not have a defined expiration date, and most of the time like SSDI won't have a defined expiration date, then you don't have to provide a doctor's letter to say that you're disabled. That's already been determined, and you don't have to provide this additional documentation.
Okay.
It's just enough that you have this income, and the government shouldn't be looking, or not the government, the lender shouldn't be looking further into it.
Right. Okay.
Sort of along the same kind of new things that we're seeing. We haven't personally seen yet, but has definitely happened. And has happened in Massachusetts, we've heard, is discrimination against borrowers who are pregnant. And so sort of the typical way that this has happened is someone will, say, apply for a loan, and then they'll go out on maternity leave before the loan closes, and the bank will be like, oh, wait, what's your income? Your income isn't continuing,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you won't even return to work because, you're a lady and you're on maternity leave, and I don't know, you might just decide to stay home with the child. And so we're going to cancel your loan until you're back at work. And
Okay.
you have to prove to us that you're going to go back to work.
Okay.
And so that's also discrimination. Although the bank can ask you to say, to provide documentation from your employer and yourself that you're going to go back to work.
So if people feel like they're in one of these categories, if people feel like there's some kind of discrimination going on with their loan, or if people are like worried about foreclosure, they can come to you guys.
Absolutely.
And you guys can what does the process look? I guess there's probably a million different things we're talking about under these categories to say what does the process look like. But like what can people expect?
Well, if you think you've been the victim of some kind of discrimination in the lending process, or if you're trying to get a modification on your loan and you feel like you might have been discriminated against in that process, you would just call us and do an intake with our our administrative assistant or receptionist would take an intake and let them know that you think you've had this problem, and they will give it right to us, and one of us will call you, and we'll do sort of an initial intake interview investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And if we find that you were the victim of some kind of discrimination, we can talk to you about your options. There are several different ways you can kind of combat discrimination, which we could talk about if you would like.
Well, actually, one thing I should ask. This is free, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good thing to mention. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about if somebody's going through this, how do they even know I'm a good candidate to get some free legal help here?
I mean,
Are you guys going to help anybody?
We don't have restrictions for lending discrimination, I don't think, right?
Right. So usually legal aid services are only for those who cannot afford other legal services.
Right.
So they're like income guidelines. But for us in our grant, we don't have those same income guidelines, especially under the HUD grant. Mm-hmm. Under the grant from the city, there are income guidelines.
Okay.
So you'd have to make around 125% of the poverty level. But for the HUD grant, we can, take cases from just about anybody.
So if people are concerned that they may be facing some kind of housing discrimination, some kind of lending discrimination involving their housing, they should just check with you guys, and probably it's going to be worth their time.
Right. And something that's really, really important with lending discrimination is that if you feel like you've been a victim of discrimination in lending, you should do something. You should call somebody really, really quickly, because lending discrimination is sort of the problem with lending discrimination is that statute of limitations on it runs really quickly. And a lot of people who were discriminated against in the subprime boom didn't realize that they were discriminated against for a couple of years, and then the statute of limitation had already run, and so they couldn't do anything legally about what had happened to them. So if you feel like maybe something's off, if you feel like possibly you've been discriminated against, it's so much better to call us, or like you can go to HUD, you can go to the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, you can go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. All of these people do take complaints, and just look into it sooner rather than later, because the worst thing to do is to find out after the statute of limitations has run that actually, yes, you probably were discriminated against, but there's absolutely nothing that can be done legally at this point.
Okay.
That's sort of what we've seen recently. People that got loans in like 2006 that might have actually been discriminatory are coming now to us in 2013 with like a foreclosure issue because they got a loan that was a really bad loan product, and there was like a interest rate that shot up all of a sudden. And we can't do anything about the lending discrimination at this point.
Right.
Whereas we, in 2006, if they had reported it, there would have been something that could have been done. So now we're fighting the foreclosure for other reasons or things like that.
Man. Well, thanks for coming on and talking about this, guys.
Thanks for having us.
This is pretty cool. I want to have this special legal assistance related treat. Years ago, and this is cool because we're gonna have these legal aid guys who we're gonna be able to see their reaction. Years ago, Bruce the Snow Ghost Russell, frequent panelist on this show back in the day, and my friend Mike Radford co-produced this song back when there was a legal assistance show on WCCA, and it was never used because it was too controversial. But today, we're gonna play it from my phone into the camera. Here it is, guys.
Oh dear.
Legal assistance. When your phone is being tapped, when your landlord's giving you problems, when you're looking for justice, legal assistance.
We're going to have to get a new version of that for our new name.
There you go. Well, thanks for coming on the show to talk about that. That's really cool. I want to talk about schools, despite what I pretend here, and I want to talk about being well dressed.
It's like eating broccoli.
I like broccoli.
All right, not broccoli, something else.
It's like eating nutritional yeast.
There you go.
So this week, in the world of the slot machines, we saw that the guys who want to bring a slot machine parlor into Worcester launched their website, worcestercasino.com.
Even the name is wrong.
Well, you know what? It says all over the website. We're bringing a casino, but this is technically a slots parlor, and technically not a casino.
And not a casino.
Also, they're bringing a game spa or a day spa.
A day spa, which Worcester needs another of
I don't,
not at all. As much as we need.
I'm obviously not in the day spa demographics. I'm not impressed by that either. But are there any updates? You've been one of the opponents.
Well,
of this.
I mean, there keeps being the update keeps being the city manager keeps coming out and saying, nope, we still haven't gotten any more information from them. And time's ticking. I mean, you've got to get all this together by the first week of October, which means they have to have the agreement. They have to have had the waiting period. The city has to have voted all by the first week of October. So that was why, I mean, at council earlier this week, Councilor Lukes stood up and said, so I assume we're voting at the preliminary election on the 17th of September. Her colleagues voted her down, asking that question, which seemed more personal than political. But
sure. As things often are as regards Councilor Lukes.
That's true. Nonetheless, it was a very legitimate question because it certainly does seem as though the slots guys aren't exactly in any great hurry, and we're not really seeing anything. Well,
Tracy, I want to continue as I continue to decide pro or con. I'm still undecided on this. I want to continue to base this on the most trivial things possible. The website is not a bad website.
There's nothing on the website. It's one page.
That's how a good website should be.
Oh, there's no even scrolling. There's nothing
nobody
there.
Likes
there's
scrolling.
Picture, title,
give us
wrong
your email.
Title,
give us your email. Here's a picture. Give us your email. Boom, we're done. You're gonna get a job. Boom.
No,
That's
they're
what
gonna
I'm talking
have
about.
a job fair.
You need to have an anti-slots website which has a picture of Worcester destroyed by a bomb and just be like, do you want this to happen? Yes, no. And that's the website. And it gets the point across. We'll see. We'll see in the fall who wins this. That's all I'm going to say. All right. That's enough for slot machines this week. There's actually been a couple of interesting legal things going on this week.
Very legal week.
One that Tracy is not going to be able to talk about is that...
no, I can talk a little bit about it.
Well... Don't watch out. The ACLU has sued Worcester in federal court over the panhandling ordinance, something which we've talked about many times on this show. And back in January, whenever Chris Robarge of the ACLU testified before the City Council committee about this, he said this in a much nicer, roundabout way. But my certainly, I think the intent of his comments were like, "Nice city, shame if you got your ass sued." And in fact, this is what happened. We have 3 plaintiffs. In this, 2 of them are panhandlers. One of them is a politician, Tracy Novick of the school committee.
I have legal standing.
The lawyer in this case said that these laws, quote, in fact, prohibit a great deal of peaceful conduct, which is protected expression, which again has been an ongoing. I think people have said this many times. The city solicitor continuing to say he thinks that this is going to be fine. Do you want to? I don't think you should say anything about this.
Well, no, I mean,
I've seen enough cop shows. You're not supposed to say anything to the press.
No, I actually don't. Actually, after I talked to the press on Monday with the lawyers on the phone, they decided that I could talk to the press, that I apparently was going to be able to handle myself without this being a problem.
And so you're there because you're someone who has stood on traffic islands and whatever doing things.
As has most of the city council, but, right. Yes, so, Kelly Square, Newton Square, Grafton Street.
But doesn't this ordinance technically say that it's not a problem to stand on a traffic island, that it doesn't become a problem until a policeman tells you to not do it, and at that point, it becomes an infraction?
And how is that, how can you do that? How is that
I don't know. I don't know anything
and not
about
only that,
these.
The city solicitor has also expressly said that we're not going to enforce it against politicians, we're only going to enforce it against panhandlers.
Sure.
Which, last time I checked, was actually not the way that this country was actually supposed to be run!
It is an anti-panhandling ordinance.
So it keeps being told. So
Oh.
Do I think that someone's going to, am I going to personally get in trouble probably for holding a sign come November? Probably not. But that should disturb me, I would think, that somebody else who's holding a different kind of sign could potentially get into trouble for standing on exactly the same spot because their sign says something different.
That sounds good to me. We actually have, you guys don't want to say anything. All right. We actually have we're going to tie it all together now with something which involves housing and the city getting its behind beat in court with a bullwhip. And that is this rooming houses thing that today, I think it is, the Supreme Judicial Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts said to the city of Worcester, this thing that you keep doing where you keep saying to people, you can't have 4 college students staying in one apartment who are not related because you would be operating a rooming house and you're not licensed operating a rooming house, and so we're going to get you for operating an unlicensed rooming house. The Supreme Judicial Court said, you can't do that anymore, Worcester. It's not a rooming house. We know it's not a rooming house. You know it's not a rooming house. Stop pretending that you think it's an unlicensed rooming house. If you want to do a zoning thing, do a zoning thing. What is this rooming house thing? I don't know anything about the legal implications of this either. I know a lot of people in Worcester who violate this all the time.
Yeah.
Who would be kind of excited to find out that their housing situation were legal, but it sounds like, I don't know. One avenue for the city has been closed, but many others are open. You guys don't have any opinions about this either. Okay, that's fine. What else do we got here? We got schools. We got clothing. Tracy Novick.
Yes.
There's still public schools in Worcester?
Last time we checked.
Oh, brother. Tell me about them. How are they doing?
Well, we're about to go through our annual... in fact, in the next 6 weeks, the Worcester School Committee is about to do all of its 3 major functions.
Okay.
Which is that we are to pass we passed the policy handbook probably this week.
Okay.
We passed the budget over the course of June, and we also review the superintendent, which are the 3 major functions the school committee does.
So the policy handbook...
Policy handbook is basically the list...
That's a pretty straightforward process.
Well, you'd think so. It's actually basically the list of rules that we run the school by, right? So the everything from how long can your shorts be to what can you carry to school to how much homework do you have is all in the policy handbook.
By the way, we only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to rush you through this stuff a little bit.
So that's something we're talking about tomorrow night. It does appear that the administration would like to reverse our long-standing de-isolation policy, which was our desegregation policy for the city of Worcester. We're under a Department of Justice decree, which last the school committee checked has actually not been reversed, and yet somehow the administration wants us to just stop
unilaterally.
Doing this. Yeah, so I'm interested in seeing how that works out tomorrow night, because I'm not.
Are you're gonna bring this up?
No, one of my colleagues has already brought it up,
so this is going to be discussed.
That'll be discussed.
This isn't going to be swept under the.
And then the Worcester Public School budget is actually out. It came out on Friday.
So no, the budget is a thing. The city council has some control over this process, right?
The city of Worcester gives the Worcester Public Schools about 1/3 of the Worcester Public School budget. The rest comes from the state.
Okay.
Actually, it's a little less than that now. It's about down to 30%.
So the city council has control over that third, with a lot of restrictions.
Well, except there's only in that they're supposed to give it to us. They actually can't decide how we spend it.
Okay. Can they decide how much to give you?
Well, legally they have an amount that they're supposed to give us.
What's that number called?
That's called net school spending.
Or I thought it was called something else. Foundation budget.
Right.
There you go. I remember that one.
Which the city of Worcester has not given the Worcester Public Schools for 3 years running.
So you say,
but
they say they are, right?
400. No. See, we have spent the last year, and we have finally gotten to a point where we all agree that they're under.
Okay.
But we're all agreeing that they're under, which we were not there a year ago or 2 years ago. So we're
the
making progress.
Step, what's the next step? Is the next step to
for this coming year,
just be okay with the fact that they're underfunding?
We're planning on being $423,000 under.
Okay.
Which again is better than we were last year, because last year was $800,000 under, and before that it was $1.2 million under.
So that's good. You're going to be running less of a deficit.
Right, and we won't run a deficit. It's just that they're going to get another letter that says, "Hey, you were actually supposed to." Now, the other piece of this, of course, is that this is all based around a formula from 1993 that probably should have been updated several times since then.
We're not going to talk about that.
Yes, we're not going to talk about that. But I would urge anyone who's interested in how we spend $300 million
to get a life. What? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, at least most of this is tax money, so it would seem like people might care.
You're right. Okay.
And if you're wondering, like, where does it all go?
Fine. Okay, you win. Okay, so keep talking about this.
It's here.
So this.
It has fun pictures on it.
So
Three-deckers, housing.
This budget this is a budget. Who puts this? This is a proposed budget, or
this is a proposed budget, right? So this is actually a little known fact. The Worcester School Committee actually has more discretion over the Worcester Public School budget than the City Council does over the city budget.
Right.
City can only reject the manager's proposals and say come up with another one. We can simply move money.
Okay. So you have a lot of. So this is the administration's.
This is the administration's
draft,
proposed
putting
budget.
Out a draft.
Yes.
Okay.
We will start talking about this the first week of June. We will talk about it for our 2 meetings in June. It has to be passed by the end of June.
Okay.
So anyone who has any kind of opinions about how we spend money. I mean, this is also 3/5 of the city of Worcester budget.
Right. I was just telling somebody earlier today this again little known fact that the school committee members are basically more powerful than the city councilors in that for several reasons. One of which is they control a lot. They really control more money.
We do.
They actually have control over that money.
We do.
And they actually give guidance to the executive that they've hired to run their side of the street of the show versus the city council just sort of saying to the city manager, "You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to drinking."
Or something.
Or whatever they're doing.
Or I have a small list of sidewalks I'd like you to.
That's right. Please replace the sidewalk, City Manager. Please.
Yeah.
Okay. So, are you guys doing your evaluation of the superintendent at the same time you're doing the budget?
Yes. Unfortunately, all of this happens in June. As I said, our major functions all happen in May and June.
Okay.
Why we can't, but it just is the way the fiscal year happens and the way that the school year happens. I mean, everything comes to the summation in June.
So we're gonna have like 6 weeks of drama.
We always have 6 weeks. I mean, in the meantime, we have graduation speeches to do and all of the rest of it too. Yeah, these are busy times. I don't know that we'll have drama. I mean, there probably will be money moved in the budget. There usually is.
Okay.
I think that there probably is. I mean, I think there probably are some things that people want to talk about. We're moving elementary school teachers around, which is always controversial because of population shifts.
Okay.
We're reallocating secondary positions, adding some foreign language, taking away some other stuff.
Okay.
Or they're proposing that we do.
There's no sort of giant ongoing battle over this or that aspect of the budget, though.
Well, I mean, the first question everybody always wants to ask is, are you cutting administration? And there are 2 central administrative positions that are being cut.
Okay.
Or at least proposed to be cut.
Do people want you to cut administration?
The T&G comment board does.
Okay. Well, so they'll be happy. They'll be really happy.
If they notice. I mean, it didn't make the headline when they first talked about the budget, so we'll see.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thanks, Tracy. This actually sounds interesting.
I think this is fun stuff. I think.
What are you most excited about of all this process here?
Well, I mean, this is actually what I tell kids when I go in and talk about what the school committee does, which is, we're the people who actually organize 6 or 7 hours of your day.
Right.
So if you've got problems with it, the people you should be talking to are the school committee members.
Okay.
Like, we're the ones who actually have oversight over everything from, like, what are you eating in the cafeteria to, like, how much homework can you give and all that kind of stuff. So there's some stuff we could do in the policy handbook. I mean, we've implemented a recess policy. People sometimes want to debate, our school uniform code and those kinds of things. I mean, that. And the budget, I think, is highly entertaining, personally.
So if people have feedback about school stuff, is absolutely the time to talk to your people and say, like, we need to change this in the policy handbook. Yep. You need to call the superintendent. You need to praise or complain to the superintendent about this or that part of her job. You need to do this with the budget.
Yep.
All right.
Get in touch with us.
That sounds pretty cool.
See, look at that. We're gonna remember that you said.
I'm getting old if I care about this. I'm sorry. All right. We have one more thing to talk about, and that is clothing. This is a super perfect week to talk about clothing too, because I feel so positive whenever I'm not the best dressed person on this program. We have such well-dressed guests today on the show. Now, people have been complaining this week that a local half-assed website run by a bunch of kids with no taste has been trying to say who are the best dressed people in Worcester. And I would like to actually push back against that assessment. I assume that people are talking about Noriyoshi Needle's new Tumblr website, East Coast Supermodels, which is a great website that launched this week. It's at woodrobe.tumblr.com. That's woodrobe.tumblr.com. This is a great website that Nori is doing. Nori is not half-assed. Nori actually has good taste. He is a kid. We can't,
He's local.
He's local. He is a kid. You know what? And he's doing a great job. He's just doing street photography. He's doing photography in people's living rooms. And it's just really positive stuff. And he's pointing out the supermodels amongst us. People don't realize. Every day in the city of Worcester, supermodels. Everywhere. It's fantastic. Well, thanks for being on the show, everybody. Tracy Novick.
Glad to be here.
Maureen St. Cyr. Emily Jones. I'm Michael Benedetti. Thanks for watching 508. We'll be back next week.